The difficulty is not in telling his life, but in deciding where to begin it. For a man such as Justo Takayama, it might be said that his life began twice, once in the noise of war, and once in the quiet moment when he chose something that could not be defended by the sword. He was born, it is believed, around the year 1552 in the region we now call Osaka, though at the time names shifted as easily as allegiances. The land itself did not yet belong to any lasting order. It was an age in which men rose by violence and fell by miscalculation, and a child's future was determined less by birth than by the fortunes of those who held him. His father, Takayama Justo, was a man of the sword, bound to shifting lords, first under Matsunaga Hisahide and entrusted with the command of Sawa Castle. In such a household, there was little room for abstraction. Loyalty, strength, and readiness for death were taught not as virtues, but as necessities. And yet, during these same years, ships arrived from distant lands, strange vessels with curved hulls and foreign tongues aboard them. With them came merchants, firearms, and priests. The priests spoke not of alliances or tribute, but of a single god whose authority did not bend with circumstance. It is said that around the age of 12, the boy who would later be known as Ukon was baptized, taking the name Justo. But this early baptism, though recorded, should not be mistaken for conviction. A child may accept a name long before he understands its burden. At that time, he was still a son of warriors. His hands learned the weight of steel before they learned the meaning of prayer. There are accounts, uncertain in detail, but persistent in spirit, of a crisis in his youth. A duel, perhaps, a near death. Something that forced him, as a young man, to consider that the path laid out before him might not be sufficient. Whether or not the event occurred as later told is less important than what followed. Around his 20th year, Justo Takayama did not merely inherit his father's faith, he chose it. Such a distinction is easily overlooked by those who have not lived in times when choice carries visible consequence. But in that world, where every allegiance had a cost, to choose a faith tied to foreign priests and distant powers was not a private matter. It was a decision that would shape alliances, determine suspicion, and invite scrutiny. From that point forward, his life appears to acquire a certain direction, though not a simple one. In 1573, he became lord of Takatsuki Castle, a position of no small importance. The castle stood between Osaka and Kyoto, at a point where movement of armies, of goods, of influence could be observed and controlled. To govern such a place required more than loyalty, it required judgment. During these years, he served under a rising power, a man who sought to unify the fractured land. Under this ruler, Christianity was not yet feared. Indeed, it was tolerated, even at times encouraged, as a useful counterweight to older religious institutions whose influence rivaled that of the state. Takayama ruled as both daimyo and Christian. In his domain, churches were built, missionaries were protected. It is said that thousands embraced the new faith under his watch. Some accounts speak of 18,000 in Takatsuki alone. But such numbers, while impressive, conceal the more delicate reality. Each conversion altered not only belief, but alignment. Trade routes, foreign contact, internal loyalty, these began to shift in subtle ways. Takayama stood, perhaps without fully intending it, at the intersection of two systems, one rooted in land and lineage, the other extending across seas. When power passed to a new ruler, one who completed what his predecessor had begun, the tone of governance changed. Where once Christianity had been tolerated, it now became suspect. In 1587, an order was given. Missionaries were to leave. Converts were to reconsider. Lords who had embraced the foreign faith were expected to demonstrate where their loyalty truly lay. For Takayama, the matter was made explicit. He was to renounce his faith or relinquish his domain. It is tempting in retrospect to treat his decision as inevitable, but such clarity belongs only to those who are not required to decide. To abandon his faith would have meant retaining power, land, and the lives tied to his command. To refuse meant surrendering all of it, status, security, and the structure that had defined his existence. He refused. And so, without battle, without rebellion, he lost everything that the world he had been born into considered meaningful. After this, his life did not end, though in a certain sense it became quieter, narrower. He lived under the protection of other lords, among them Maeda Toshie in Kanazawa. Once a ruler, he now depended on the goodwill of others. The transformation was complete, from daimyo to a man without domain. Yet there is no record of bitterness. In these years, his reputation grew, not as a warrior, but as something more difficult to define. Even beyond Japan, his story was heard. It is said that the Pope himself spoke of him with admiration, a curious fact given the distance between Rome and the provinces of Japan. But admiration did not alter his condition. He remained displaced within his own country, tolerated rather than restored. Meanwhile, the state itself continued to change. Power consolidated, suspicion of foreign influence deepened. The question was no longer whether Christianity would be controlled, but whether it would be allowed at all. In 1614, the final decision was made. Christianity was banned outright. Those who would not renounce it were to leave. Takayama, now in his 60s, was among them. On the 8th day of November, he departed Nagasaki with roughly 300 others. Not soldiers, not envoys, but exiles. The voyage to Manila took 43 days. It was not a journey of purpose, but of removal. The sea, which once brought trade and ideas, now served as a boundary. He arrived on the 11th of December, weakened by illness. In Manila, he was received with honor. Here at last, he could live openly as a Christian, without concealment or compromise. But by then, it seems, the matter had already been decided. He lived there only a short while, 40 days, perhaps 44, long enough to be welcomed, not long enough to begin again. He died in early February of 1615 at the age of 63. There is a certain irony, though it may not be the right word, in the fact that he reached a place where he could finally live as he had chosen, only to leave it almost immediately. But perhaps this is not irony, perhaps it is completion. He was buried in Manila, far from the land where his choices had been made. In the years that followed, he came to be remembered in many ways, as a Christian lord, as a man of conscience, as a figure caught between worlds that could not be reconciled. Some called him a samurai saint, but such titles risk simplifying what is more difficult to accept, that his life was not one of victory, but of relinquishment. He did not change the course of the state. He did not preserve the presence of his faith in his homeland. He did not die in battle or in dramatic defiance. Instead, he yielded again and again until nothing remained to be taken. And yet in that yielding, something endured. Not power, not territory, only the record of a man who, when asked to choose, did so with a consistency that outlasted the world that demanded the choice. It is perhaps for this reason that his life resists easy telling. For it is not a story of what he gained, but of what he refused to surrender, and what, in refusing, he quietly left behind.